lot of folks that have what they call an ordination. It's a piece of paper that they have in a frame hanging on their wall. In Yah's eyes, ordination is a lot more involved and a lot more serious. Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, Day 3 of Tetzaveh, and we are in Shemot, or Exodus chapter 29, and let's read a few verses today, beginning with verse 1. This is the task you shall do to them, to set them apart to serve me as priests. Take one young bull and 2 rams, perfect ones, and unleavened bread and unleavened cakes mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers anointed with oil. Make these of wheat flour. You shall put them in one basket and bring them in the basket along with the bull and the 2 rams. And then you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the door of the tent of appointment and wash them with water. You shall take the garments that put on Aaron the long shirt and the robe of the shoulder garment and the shoulder garment and the breastplate, and shall gird him with the embroidered band of the shoulder garment, and shall put the turban on his head and put the set apart sign of dedication on the turban, and take the anointing oil and pour it on his head and anoint him. And you shall bring his sons and put long shirts on them, and shall gird them with girdles, Aaron and his sons, and put turbans on them, and the priesthood shall be theirs for an everlasting law. So you shall ordain Aaron and his sons. Now, a lot of details here, and there are a lot of more details that follow in this set of reading. A couple thoughts to introduce this. One is that the Levitical order of priesthood is not to be replaced. It says very clearly here, it's for an everlasting law. Yah never intended for the Levitical priesthood just to be a parenthetical set of priests from the time of the giving of the Torah or the wilderness experience all the way up to Yeshua, and then suddenly have no legitimate purpose, as is often preached, but that's not scripturally true. And then there are those who say, well, it's the Melchizedek or Melchizedek priesthood that is really the one that's important. A couple thoughts here. The Melchizedek priesthood is pre-existing, and it is continually existing. Yeshua, Hebrews says, is the high priest of the order of Melchizedek. Melchizedek meaning the king, a king of righteousness. And so that priesthood still functions, but the altar that priesthood serves is not earthly, but rather heavenly. Yeshua, the high priest of that order, according again to the book of Hebrews, he serves not an altar on the earth, but an altar is in the heavens before the throne of Yah. As participants through Yeshua, as redeemed through Yeshua that we are, any priesthood function that we have, not being Levites ourselves, is that we stand with Yeshua and we plead for the blood that is on that altar, which is still wet, since heaven is timeless. There's no decay to that blood. That blood is still wet, and it's still speaking redemption and healing and covenant and restoration. Very powerful concepts. We agree with the altar and we intercede at that altar. But we replace nobody. The Levites, any altar that is legitimate on the earth, which will be only at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, that altar, they alone are authorized and ordained to serve at it, and they will be ordained and serve at it. And the book of Ezekiel says that they will be. So the idea that the Levitical priesthood has been done away with is error. They are still a legitimate priesthood. It says here for the ordination that they are to bring a bull and 2 rams. And then it talks about these particular wafers. Now, let's look at the bull. The bull was offered, it says, as a sin offering in verse 14. And so then we go down to the first ram, and it says in verse number 18 that it is an ascending offering. And so with the bull, any sins that are needed to be atoned for Aaron and his sons and their house, it is atoned for with the offering of this particular animal and the giving of its blood. The second offering is an ascending offering, an olah, which then elevates these men to a higher place, drawing them closer to Yah. Ascending, whole offering, burnt offering, elevation offering is another term that can be used here. And then we come to this third offering. And it's one of the most unique offerings in this regard. It says that when Moshe slays this ram, in verse number 20, that he takes some of its blood and puts it on the tip of the right ear of Aaron, and on the tip of the right ear of his sons, and on the thumb of their right hand, and on the big toe of their right foot. And then he sprinkles the blood all around the slaughter place. And he takes some of that blood and some of the anointing oil, and they mix it together, and they sprinkle it on Aaron and on his garments and on his sons and their garments. And then their garments are now set apart, and is a offering of ordination, it says in verse number 22. So it's a unique offering. These men are atoned for, they are elevated, and they are now ordained. And it is that the blood has been applied to them. Now let's back up a little bit and look at the bread here. There's matzah lechem. Again, all of these have no leaven in them. It's lechem is rooted in lacham, which means to fight and to battle and to make war. This references the spiritual warfare element of these men's priestly service as they are fighting in the spiritual realm through their Levitical worship, intervening and interceding for Israel. And then there is matzah challah. The word achala is halal, to profane oneself, to make common, to wound, or to pierce. And this, I believe, is a reference to Yeshua, who was made sin even though he had no sin, and that he was wounded and pierced in our behalf. Thirdly, there is matzah rachik. Rachik is rooted in a word, rachak. Now, I know you're not going to remember all of these words, but just bear with me for a moment. Rachak means to spit. To spit, really? This would render one unclean. And it is this bread is smeared with oil, or is it anointed? And with the smearing of oil, we get the term Mashiach, which is where we get Mashiach from. It represents Mashiach, who was indeed spat upon, becoming unclean in that regard. Though he had done nothing for himself to be unclean, he bore our uncleanness. So these men are atoned for, they are elevated, and they are ordained. They are acknowledged as warriors in the spiritual realm, warring on behalf of Israel against powers of darkness. They bear the image of Yeshua that has been wounded and pierced for Israel, as well as the aspect of the Messiah who was spat upon. They're dealing with our uncleanness, and they are dealing with those things that make us profane. In other words, their ministry is a redeeming, restoring, reconciling, renewing ministry. But then there's this blood thing. The blood is placed on the tip of their ear, the thumb, and their right toe. What is the blood for? Why does Yah want to put blood on somebody? And it's very, very rare that any blood is ever put upon anyone in the ministry of the Levitical priesthood. This attaches us to the altar. They are attached to the altar. They belong with the altar that is also stained with blood. And you have to remember that their ministry serves an altar that Yah has set apart and chosen. More on this all tomorrow. Until then, shalom.